Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 284, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is
Lotus Prince.
And we have another wonderful show here for you. We have basically the 2021 year in review here for Corrective Consciousness. We wanted to take the opportunity to share with everyone the best of popular culture that we've experienced this year. It doesn't have to be something that was released this year, because a lot of times Lotus and I indulge in stuff that is vintage.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I've played one game this year that came out this year.
And it was probably a Patreon request, if I had to guess, right?
Actually, that's a very good guess, but no, it was Lost Judgment.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. But that is like the one series that you absolutely keep up on that I know of.
It is extremely rare for me to play a game now. But I don't know. For me, it's the Yakuza series.
Well, why don't you, since we're bringing that up, why don't you talk a little bit about Lost Judgment, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, it's a solid title, and it was a refreshing change of pace to go back from Like a Dragon. I liked Like a Dragon, but I'm not big on turn-based combat in the Yakuza games, and it adds so much time to the gameplay. Even though it's engaging and it's a love letter to Dragon Quest, it takes forever, even though it's cool and cleverly executed.
It's easily like an 80 to 100 hour game as a result.
Yeah, you can really push it. But Lost Judgment was back to the beat 'em up style because, I mean, I call them all Yakuza games because they're in-universe, but it's not a Yakuza title.
It's a spin-off, basically.
It's a spin-off. Yeah. You're not following Kiryu or Ichiban. You are following Yagami. And I don't know if he's, he's still able to use his attorney's badge, but anyway, he was a lawyer who just kind of fell off of things. And Judgment, the plot can get pretty dark. First game certainly went there. The second game largely focuses on school bullying and how brutal it can get, and the consequences for both the victim and the bullies. Because, this is one of those subjects that, it's difficult to talk about without going into spoilers, but, just, man, everybody gets fucked in this game. You see, a particularly uncomfortable to watch recording of a particular example of bullying, and you're like, man, I hope these guys get what's coming to them, but, it's established pretty early on, someone responsible for this kind of thing to happen certainly did. The opening scene is firefighters responding to a fire. They see all sorts of smoke coming out of a building, but when they get in there, it looks like there were just some little smoke bombs or flares left, and they're like, oh, come on, someone's, trolling us, but for what reason? But they see that a bunch of flares are placed on the floor of the room they're in, in an arrow pointing to, a corner of the room, and they're like, all right, I'll bite. What the hell is this? And there's a tarp. They pull off the tarp and it reveals a dead body, but this person has very obviously, at a glance, been tortured before he was killed, and you're like, who is this person and what the fuck happened? And the game goes from there.
Wow.
So yeah, it goes pretty nuts. So you look into what could have happened and why, and other cases are happening, some of them connected, some of them not, and as is the case with every Yakuza title, it builds up into this bigger picture kind of thing that has ties that make sense, but it's an interesting take. The only thing that's a little weird is that to get more into, the high school that this stuff revolves around, to be able to get intel, is you kind of just become a sort of, I don't even know what the word, de facto or something, head of one of the clubs. So you're just allowed ingress and egress to the high school. So you're just getting involved in club mysteries because you are the supervisor of the mystery club, which is great because you're a detective for hire. So cool, that coincides. So you find out all sorts of stuff in the school, which is the whole. It's like a gigantic series of optional sub quests that build up to its own grand conclusion that's not tied to the main plot, but it's satisfying nonetheless. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. It's great.
I mean, just as an aside, I mean, I've always been jealous of Japan's club culture in their high schools because, like,
Yeah, serious business.
a lot of people like met like their like future like coworkers that way. Like they would, like a lot of anime studios were started that way. Like people just like started off as friends, working on pet projects together, and turned it into a business. Like, I've always been kind of jealous of that kind of thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of or read the manga or anime Genshiken. Have you ever heard of that?
I think I might have heard the name, but that doesn't really mean anything.
Well, it's basically the anime, like the otaku club in this one high school. It follows an otaku club that's really into doujin materials and things like that.
Sure.
So they basically have an entire like manga library and like anime library in their like club room, and they go there like after school, and then like they hang out with their friends and all like take different volumes out and read them and discuss them, and I've always been jealous of that. I kind of always wish I had like a book club, but it was like like comic book related or video game related. And there's like really nothing that exists like that in America, like especially in a physical space. Like I guess you could have that for like podcasts and things like that, but like never in like a physical space. And there's a lot to that, and I kind of always secretly have always wanted to like maybe like set up a viewing lounge or something like that. I think that's what they call them these days, like a place where you can like put on a movie and then like watch it with people. Like I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of cool. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean that's basically it. It's just like it's going into trying to solve this murder, which leads to other seemingly unrelated events that might have more to do with each other than you might think. And it's a mystery. You're trying to solve a mystery, and you're a detective, so that lines up anyway. You were assigned to do something, and you didn't realize how big it would be. And it's quite satisfying. Not to mention, it's also satisfying to see some people who joined your party, not literally like in Like a Dragon, but like your associates from the previous game. I love Kaito, and he's going to be getting his own DLC sometime early next year.
Nice. Well, I definitely look forward to playing that myself. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I'm just so far behind in these things, but I do.
This is technically a sequel game, so have fun with that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what my plan's going to be. I think after beating Like a Dragon, which is one of the games that I wanted to talk about for this year, because that's probably the game that I've spent the longest amount of time on.
It's a Dragon Quest game that's disguised as a Yakuza game. That's disguised as a Yakuza game.
I absolutely love it, and when I'm done that, I'll probably go on to play the original Judgment, because
it's very good.
Yeah, and that's also a good place to start.
It's a brawler.
Yeah, it's a good place to start, and then eventually, if I'm gonna go back to Yakuza, I'll probably go back to Yakuza 0 and try to beat that. But
Zero's a very good starting point. Although after playing Judgment, it's gonna feel like ancient if you play Yakuza 0.
It's okay. I mean, I'm used to playing old games anyway, so it's not a big deal. But I wanted to talk about Like a Dragon just because like I've said this before in the past, but actually I put my finger on it on Tuesday, with Reactive, when I said that I think my favorite games now are starting to be like casts of characters that really take the time to develop and make you love each character.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Like a Dragon is, unlike other Yakuza games, Kiryu is Mr. Stoic. He has people you recognize across the games. Probably the closest he gets to real interactions is with Date the detective, who's still kind of mostly a professional associate, and Haruka, like, the girl he takes care of. But Ichiban is... we've had this discussion before. Like a Dragon, and Ichiban in particular, is in many ways the opposite of Kiryu.
He's a goofball.
Including, well, he's a goofball, but he's outgoing and very passionate about his, like, friendship and loyalty connections. He is really big on that stuff. So a lot of Like a Dragon, I mean, I don't know how many party members you have, but you're going to get more. And in fact, if you really want to push that business mini game, it's not mini at all, but if you want to push that fucking nightmare, you can get a party member out of that too. But he's really like he's very loyal to his friends, which is like, I mean, he's an ex-Yakuza, but he is not Kiryu, nor is he supposed to be.
So what you're getting at is one of the major things that you can do in the game to bond with the other characters is that you can go up to them in the bar that you guys hang out at.
Yeah.
And
get some backstory.
You get some backstory and also like some side stories that just have to do with those characters alone. And that's really where they give you rewards for doing that, but to be honest, the reward is in itself.
The information.
Honestly, like the stories that are told during those vignettes are phenomenal and very rewarding to experience anyway.
There's one particular character's in there that like answers a question that I had about a different Yakuza game, because like I was like, how is this allowed to happen in this game? And that person's backstory actually addresses that.
Oh, wow.
I should also mention, by the way, when you go eat food, depending who's in your party, and possibly depending what kind of food you eat, you can get a little bit of extra flavor text about that. They talk about the food. And also, there are certain places in Kamurocho, and, well, you're not really spending most of the game in Kamurocho, but Ichinjo, where, like, if you have certain characters in your party, when you walk on these particular locations, like a little prompt will come up, and if you press the prompt button, then you'll have a little just mini conversation. They're quite entertaining.
And I have to say that very few games make me laugh, and this game routinely makes me laugh. It is very funny. Yeah. It is a very funny game that has a lot of really goofy side things that happen that you don't need to do, but oh god, like if you're not doing that, I don't know why you're playing this game.
Yakuza in general really runs the gamut between like genuinely emotional and serious and just like fucking dumb.
Oh yeah, like, and it's so dumb that it's really kind of night and day. It's so dumb it's almost infantile, but it takes you, like, it takes you aback every time it happens,
like when you're
even
trying
though
to
you're
catch the
expecting
public
it.
urinator and you see four people in seemingly compromising positions, but it's like, I was playing my flute while crouching, and you're like, what the all right.
I was dying. I was picking the wrong people on purpose because it's just so stupid. Like, I was dying. I mean, just the fact that the characters are really, like, they're really exaggerated, weird versions of like, real types of people is also really funny.
Actually, you know what? Probably one of the things that made me laugh the hardest in the Yakuza series, as far as a sub-story, was, I want to say it was Yakuza 5, where you had to carry some precarious thing. It was like food or whatever. But like Yakuza always takes place in winter, so you have to be careful when you're going from one location to another because it's kind of icy. Don't fall over and blow the sub-story. But the part that killed me was that, like, this is such an arcade game thing to do, but it's like you're near the end of this trip. This has been a pain in the ass, I know. Now you just got to get like across the street, and there's like 100 people just like who've tripped and are like sliding horizontally in front of you. It's like, what the? It's so ridiculous. Like, why would this happen? It's just the funniest. It's like that Mortal Kombat gif where everyone's slipping on the ice.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just sliding in front of you and like, whoa, like what? Like, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, I routinely laugh at Like a Dragon. I mean, there's just so many things. I mean, the parodies, the references to other video games in general is way up there for.
There's a lot of love letters to Sega games, and I don't just mean
And
the
even to
arcade with
Pokemon.
Hang On and Fantasy Zone or whatever.
Even to Pokemon, like it has a
Yeah.
big Pokemon reference
When you have
in
to
it.
choose which goon to fight, and there's red, green, and blue, I was like, oh my god.
Not only that, but you basically have a Pokedex for the game.
Yeah, and you say I choose you when you beat them, or
Yeah.
when you choose the one guy. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean this game is overwhelmingly funny.
You know what made me really happy, by the way? Yakuza 1 did this, and I think 0 does it too at one point, like, out of nowhere, because it only does it once in the whole game, where you're in a car, and you have to, like, you actually have a gun, but you're supposed to be firing at the people firing at you. But it's fucking Virtua Cop, where the red circle contracts before
That's
they
awesome.
shoot. It's like, what? Like, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
and
mean,
you know what really got me?
so
This really
good.
got in Yakuza. Oh, by the way, there's I think it might be around in Like a Dragon. You can't go in, but there's a little building with a sign Emerald Hills on it,
Oh,
which is kind of
that's
cute.
cool. Yeah.
But there's a guy in Yakuza 3, Rukia, who like the Yakuza games make a big deal of this, and Like a Dragon is no exception, where you pull off your shirt and, oh damn, look at that tattoo on his back. Like a lot of named bad guys do that. Oh shit, look at their tattoo. Like Majima has a demon on his, like, you know, that whole thing. But there's a guy early on in Yakuza 3 who he's got this big snake on his back. And he's like, they call me the Fighting Viper. And I'm like, yes. It's amazing.
Yeah, I really love everything about this game, and I it's such a shame that I don't have enough time to beat it, because I
I will
really
say,
love it.
the Yakuza games are very long, but to be fair to you, Like a Dragon is the long one. If you want to get through the others, I mean, they're still long, but it's faster than a Dragon Quest game.
Yeah. Well, I really love it. I think it's great, but I need to get back on it, and I mean, and to your point, I mean, I'm at a point in the game that isn't very fun. You know, doing that.
It's optional, and if you ever feel low on money, you can come back and do it. But if you want to grind it out, it's pretty exhausting. And like I said earlier, like, what sucks is that, like, you get a party member for doing it. Like, you really want to do that.
Yeah, I believe you.
One thing I will say, by the way, is precisely, this is a little disappointing, honestly, but precisely because that whole mini thing is optional, the party member you get, and I'm sure you know who it is, but the party member you get, like, you never interact with in any of the story cutscenes because you didn't have to have that person in them. So it's like, okay.
I really love this game, and I really recommend it to anybody who is like into like the series. If you haven't played it yet, I just think it's just so much fun. I really am enjoying it, and I am gonna go back to it. I just haven't gotten a chance. How about anything else, Lotus, that you wanted to go over? I know you have some other games that you played this year for
Sure.
your Let's Play channel and everything.
Well, here's a surprise and a future Let's Play, but I've as of just this week, I've been playing Sekiro, the FromSoft game after Dark Souls 3. It is not quite a Souls-like. You could see how it looks like one, and there are aspects of it that feel like it, but it's definitely different enough. You had damn well... I'm like, if you thought Bloodborne was the learn to parry game because you can't block, oh my god. I mean, you can block in Sekiro, but the main way you get anywhere is by parrying, because you and every enemy in the game has a posture meter. So everybody has a health bar and posture meter. So how do you beat an enemy? You reduce their health to 0 and do a death blow, or you raise their posture to max and do a death blow. And it's probably way faster to deflect their attacks and raise their posture meter, especially because enemies are good at blocking. So have fun with that for 100% of the game. And I actually am having fun with that. There are some fights, there are fights that I did, like in Dark Souls 1, Artorias. I think I've mentioned that on the podcast before, but I've certainly mentioned it offline repeatedly, that was one of the more engaging fights for me, because it's just like, avoid, now's my turn to attack, oh man, the pressure's on. But in Sekiro, you don't generally want to run away unless you're healing. You want to just stay in there and deflect their attacks. Holding down the block button is probably a bad idea, unless you're not quite familiar with how they work, because if you hold down the block button, you'll be protected, generally, but you'll raise your own posture meter. But you want to be tapping that L1 button, or depending what platform you're playing it on. So this is the game that I've heard most of all the Souls-likes that's described as secretly a music game, because it's all about pressing the button to that rhythm that you have to find.
Almost like Punch-Out. Coming.
It's very, very engaging, though, when you're in a boss fight that you kind of have a sense of the patterns of. You feel like such a badass. Even when you beat like an early mini-boss, it'll become like, oh, that guy was challenging for me, like later on. But when you're in it, you feel like such a pro when you get it right. It's a lot of fun. And the movement is shockingly good for a FromSoft game, because you have a grapple hook that lets you get around very quickly and conveniently, as long as there are grapple points nearby, which there usually are. So movement is better than it's ever been.
It's kind of like an extension of an unlikely, game from the 80s, like Punch-Out. Like Punch-Out's like a rhythm game when you think about it.
Yeah,
right?
There kind of is that. Yeah, in Punch-Out, you can block to the detriment of your hearts, or you can dodge. So yeah, it's along those lines.
But it's not a boxing game. Is my argument.
Yeah, it's a music game.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
In Sekiro, you block, or better yet, deflect, or some attacks are unblockable, so you dodge to the side, or simply run away. Or if it's a sweep, you jump. And there's like step dodges, and there's jump counter dodges when done appropriately. And again, you are such a badass if you pull this stuff off effectively. It looks and feels great.
Wow. So it's kind of funny that you ended up liking it as much, because
I've heard it was very polarizing.
Yeah, exactly. I really did not know how you would react to it, because there are some people that absolutely love or absolutely hate.
Yeah, this isn't Dark Souls. This is bullshit. But no, I am really enjoying it, because one of the people on my Discord had mentioned, once you get to a certain point, things just start clicking for you. And yeah, once you get into the groove, it feels really good.
I really want to play that eventually as well, but I really am behind in everything, so I don't know what to play next when it comes to FromSoft.
Even FromSoft, I'm kind of behind. Elden Ring is on the verge of coming out, and Sekiro's 2 years old.
Well, I think the next logical game is to play Bloodborne, because that I played the original Dark Souls.
I was gonna say Forever Kingdom, but okay, Bloodborne.
Yeah, but I don't know if I want to play the other Dark Souls, if that makes any sense, because I love the original so much.
Well,
I don't know whether
Dark Souls 2 is kind of a Gaiden.
Yeah.
It's interesting in its own way. That's one of those games I think you'll love or hate. But Dark Souls 3, on one hand, it's clearly a follow-up to Dark Souls 1, and it seems to be a conclusion to the series. On the other hand, though, I've heard complaints that it's it expects you to have played Dark Souls 1, and I don't mean for lore, but I mean
gameplay.
Fights are just tough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like those old wizardry games that like they're not. You had to have played the original one all the way through, and then this is basically an expansion of that.
Yeah,
Like
are you
Wizardry
good
2,
yet? Yeah.
yeah, Wizardry 2 is like Wizardry 1 but harder, and you need to have brought your like old powerful characters from your old last game,
Okay.
in order to in order to continue. You know,
Because that's the thing. Like,
yeah,
for example, in Demon Souls, the tutorial boss,
yeah.
you can beat him, but you're supposed to lose.
They don't expect you to. Yeah.
Yeah, they give you a token if you beat him, but you're supposed to lose. Dark Souls alludes to that. The Asylum Demon looks very similar to the Vanguard, and if you try fighting him without running away, you're probably going to lose, but you actually respawn, you have to beat him. But you're supposed to run past him, get a sword that works, and they give you a free plunging attack on him, which takes off like a third of his health, so all of a sudden he becomes a lot easier to deal with. You beat him. Dark Souls 2 does not have a mandatory watch out for this boss. It does have an ogre off to the side who will beat the shit out of you. You don't have to go that way, but like, he's the gatekeeper early game. Dark Souls 3, though, Eudex Gundyr, that guy, like, I beat him first try because I just beat Bloodborne before that. But if this is your first Souls game ever, that guy's gonna fucking stomp you, and you have to beat him.
Yeah.
Like, he has 2 phases, and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like, that like, if this is your first Souls game, you are not gonna have fun. That guy is a gatekeeper and a half. Like, he's like, once you learn how to play the game, he's actually pretty straightforward. But when the only guys you've been fighting are 1 and 2 hit scrubs, this guy just kicks your ass, and you don't know what you're doing wrong. Like, he is quite tough for a first boss. Like, I beat him because I've beaten Dark Souls 1, 2, and Bloodborne, but, like, goddamn, like, he doesn't play. Like, that's your, like, this is Dark Souls moment.
Yeah.
Like, even Bloodborne, the Scourge Beast was the one you lose to, but that's a regular-ass enemy, and he, like, doesn't respawn after you lose to him.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I don't know, like, I could just play Bloodborne and then go to Sekiro, like, you know what I mean?
You could.
And never play
exist in their own little universe.
Dark Souls 2 or 3.
You honestly could skip 2. Some people will say I'm blaspheming by saying that. 2, I honestly, it's funny, I recommend 2 probably the most to people who are just getting into Souls for the first time. Like, 2 is a good starting point. Is it the easiest? It's not necessarily the easiest. It has a lot of features that are user-friendly, but it has the potential to be very difficult.
I see.
But, and there's a lot of gank enemies. How do I make the game harder? More enemies. Like, it's, like, come the fuck on. But Dark Souls 3, I feel, is the better game and more thematically appropriate to Dark Souls 1. But,
makes sense.
But it definitely steps things up. Although, I will say, though, the conclusion boss of the final DLC, there's 2 DLCs, man, that fight is something else. That feels like the end of an era just because of
what it is.
What it is, but not in lore. Like, what it's a reference to, if that makes sense.
I see.
Like, because Souls has leaned heavily into Berserk references, Bloodborne as well. There's an enemy in Dark Souls 2 that looks like Berserker Armor Guts. It's actually not that tough of an enemy to kill. The HP isn't great, but it leaps around and throws kunai at you just like Guts, and you're like, what? So, like, this final DLC boss, though, it's definitely a Berserk reference, but it just feels like, yep, that's as far as they can go.
Wow. I think that Black Dragon is really the pinnacle of Dark Souls for me.
That was a damn good one. Dark Souls 3 also has a big tough dragon.
Yeah, but that one in particular, what's his name?
Calamite.
Calamite, yeah.
Because when you beat him, you get the Calamity ring, Calamity.
Oh, Calamite is like the hardest boss in that game to me. So,
oh yeah, hands down. And same with me. Now that I know how to dodge roll, it might not be so bad, but I tanked and he was rough.
He's really a war of attrition. That's the problem with him.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm getting good. I know what I'm doing. I've clearly removed this much health, and then he just tags me.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be good for a long time
Yes.
while fighting him.
By the way, one thing about Calamate is in Kingsfield, there were two opposing dragons, Seath and Gyra, the white dragon and the black dragon. The black dragon's been vanquished, but Seath becomes corrupt because everything FromSoft touches is like things turn to shit after a long time.
Sure.
So, I mean, Seath's a boss in Souls as well, right?
Sure.
So it's suspected that Calamite could possibly be a nod to Gyra, because it's like the big scary black dragon. Like, maybe that might be a reach, but maybe.
Yeah. Is it supposed to be the same Seath? Really?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, even patches in Dark Souls is not the same patches as in Demon Souls, even though they look precisely the same, act precisely the same, and have the same voice actor.
Yeah.
So, is it the same Seath? I doubt it.
Yeah, and then
Not to mention, in
Snubbly.
Dark Souls, you are in Lordran, and in Kingsfield's Verdite, I think it is.
Yeah. It's just an interesting to think of.
1994, or 5 or 6 PS1 game.
Well, it's just something to think of. Anything else that you wanted to talk about in pertaining to Sekiro while you're at it?
Not for Sekiro. Just like when you get into a good boss fight, it's good. Like when both of you are just wailing on each other but getting those deflects in, even if you die, like
It's like a good tennis match, right? Like a good tennis match.
It really kind of is.
It is a lot of back and forth. It doesn't necessarily matter who wins. It just matters how long each side can keep up with the other side.
Yeah,
right?
like I mean, obviously you can't advance until you win, but like the first couple times you die, like you're not even mad.
You're like, oh god.
Yeah, just like wow, like well, the first time you die it's like almost a guarantee. Like okay, I kind of know how the boss fights, and then the second fight, you're probably gonna die, but you're like, I think I'm getting it. Like it's kind of like that.
I gotcha. Well, this year, I really fell into comic books again. And I wanted to get an opportunity to talk about that because I you know what really got me on it was I had been going back and reading Hellblazer, which is the John Constantine stuff from back in the 80s and the early 90s, and my favorite comic book series of all time has always and will always be I presume the Sandman. Neil Gaiman's the Sandman, and from all I just have personal connection with it. It's just something I read over a long period of time, and it culminated with me reading the end of it towards the end of college. So it had of course ended way before that in actual time, but I hadn't read it all. So I read it a little bit at a time, ever since I was a freshman in high school all the way through like the end of college. So I would buy a trade paperback, every once in a while, and there are 10 of them. So I really enjoyed it, and just absolutely love everything about it. And from there, I have really enjoyed the old like DC Vertigo stuff as a result.
Sure.
And really like most of the Vertigo fans will tell you the crux of Vertigo is really in John Constantine Hellblazer, because he's kind of the thing that anchors Vertigo. He's like the character that kind of talks to all the other Vertigo characters, and he's kind of like the thing that links them all.
It's like Randolph Flagg in like half of Stephen King's books.
Well, not only that, but like it was also a series that ran all the way through Vertigo's existence. So it's also like one of the most popular brands within it. So like the Sandman just ended, when it was over. And also like a lot of people point to the beginning of Vertigo, even though it isn't the beginning of Vertigo, because it doesn't have that name, to be Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, right? Alan Moore's Swamp Thing is really was retroactively made a Vertigo title. John Constantine comes from Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run. So, it was... Hellblazer is what persisted since the beginning. And I really, really have enjoyed Garth Ennis's run on Hellblazer, who's the second major writer of Hellblazer. The first one was Jamie Delano, and his was awesome. And I did not expect his run to be topped, because like he's like the guy who started Hellblazer, so like he's the reason why it got to be successful. So it was amazing. And then Ennis like starts off his run with probably the most iconic story in Hellblazer, which is John Constantine is dying of lung cancer because he's a chain smoker. And he basically tricks the devil into like curing his cancer.
Well, that was in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it was in the movie, because it's like one of the
that was
most
fantastic.
Iconic.
Because like I don't even know if the intent was to trick the devil to do that. I think it was just like a way to get into heaven when he totally deserves to be in hell and he knows it. And the devil was like, "Oh, fuck you! I'm gonna cure your cancer to give you a chance
to fuck up again,
to fall back into a shit person, so I can take you for myself."
So the story in the comic is different. The motivations are different, and it's fantastic. It is the Red Harvest, but in demon form. So he basically is dying of lung cancer. So what he does is he summons the 3 barons of hell, like the top demons of hell, besides Lucifer himself.
Those guys are tough. They take 5 rockets to kill.
Barons of hell.
Yeah.
But basically, like the 3 most evil, like highest up demons in hell.
Yeah.
And what he does is he makes a deal with each of them, but separately and secretly from each other.
Oh, yeah, and they're like conflicting deals.
They all want his soul when he dies. So what they do is they cure his cancer, because if he were to die, he would start a 3-way civil war in hell.
Yeah, like the movie was more low key, where he did the devil a major favor by alerting him that they were going to kill his spawn. And the devil's like, "Well, shit, I guess I owe you something now. What do you want? More life or whatever?" And he's like, "No, there's someone who is in hell that I want out to go to heaven instead." And he's like, "Oh, shit, that's easy. Okay, taking you now." And then John, but like the fact that he like sacrificed himself for someone else would put him into heaven. And the devil's like, no. So he cures his cancer.
Yeah, this was like one of the most satisfying things to read, because it's just like, oh, they're just trying to stalemate a war that nobody wants to fight, which is
pretty good,
because their pride is so great that none of them will concede to not take his soul.
I mean, who could say no to having his soul?
Well, that's also the crux of that in particular, is that he's pissed off all of them individually in the past, that they especially want his soul more than anybody, because he has created so many problems for hell and individual demons over time that they just want him that badly so they could torture him for the rest of eternity. And they're so proud to be the ones that are going to receive him, that they know it will create a war, but they want to avoid the war, but they would still commit the war if it
If
it
push
happened.
came to shove, they do it. It's just better if they don't.
Exactly. So it's really a shrewd political move.
Which is pretty funny because, like, in the movie, he bought himself a ticket to heaven, but still as a middle finger to Satan. But in hell, like in the comics, he's still an asshole and deserves to go to hell. But like,
absolutely.
but he weaseled his way out of it.
Exactly. No, John Constantine would only ever get into heaven by accident and
Yeah.
or by technicality.
I could honestly see, like, this would be a reach, but I could see the devil sending him to heaven to prevent
Correct.
the fight.
Correct.
Some weirdness like that.
That is exactly the kind of thing that would happen in the comic, because...
Although, I will say, though, one thing regarding the movie,
Yeah.
I know this is getting off of the subject of comics.
Sure.
Watch the movie just for the last 15-20 minutes, because when Peter Stormare comes in as the devil, he steals the whole movie. It's great.
That movie is very underrated. It is a good
It's
movie.
not my favorite. It's pretty good, though. It's certainly watchable today. It's not a bad movie, but, like, Peter Stormare's the devil. Wow. That's the scene you watch it for.
Yeah. And then from there, what ended up happening was I picked up a comic on a lark because I was on vacation and I wanted to see if Neil Gaiman's final Miracle Man volume had come out, and it still hasn't come out. But when I went to the comic book store, I was just asking the guy, "Hey, do you know if this had ever come out?" And he didn't know, because like Miracle Man's kind of like it's an obscure...
It's like an 80s series.
It's an obscure series to anybody who isn't a super comic book nerd, because it was an Eclipse comic. It was never a Marvel comic, and it was in extremely small supply in terms of its printings. So you only ever could read it if you were in the know at the time, or you had paid a lot of money to read it later, or had stolen it because you know it's the only way you could have, because the company went out of business, and the characters' rights have been in hell, like the worst kind of legal hell, until about 5 years ago. Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman wrote this beautiful series that ended up unfinished, and then Neil Gaiman promised to finish it. So they have put out the first 4 volumes of that, which were the original stories from the 80s, which I now have, but I was wondering whether the 5th volume had come out, and it hasn't. So,
Yeah.
but while I was asking about that, he thought I meant Mr. Miracle, which is a different character entirely.
Oh.
He is Darkseid's son, who, Darkseid's...
Does Darkseid have more than one son? Because I remember Mongol.
So, Mongol... so, here's how it works. Darkseid and the leader of the Good Planet, I forget his name, switch sons in a gangster style, like War of the Roses style political thing, where like I won't attack you and you won't attack me because we both have each other's hostages.
That's fucking nuts.
Yeah, I don't know why you would ever do that to your son. But
I don't know why a good guy would do it to his son. I can easily, without a second thought, know why Darkseid doesn't give 2 fucks.
No, well, Darkseid doesn't care about anybody.
Yeah, Mongol's a tool at best.
But Darkseid traded Orion. Orion was his was his biological son to the Good Planet, and the Good Planet traded Mr. Miracle, whose name is Scott Free because he gets out of everything.
Because Orion, I remember on Justice League Unlimited, he's one of like the scarier, powerful heroes, but he's a hero.
He is Mongol is Orion's brother, technically,
Okay.
biological
Mongol is
brother.
terrifying.
Yeah, Mongol is Darkseid's other son, who he didn't give up.
Okay.
So anyway, Mr. Miracle was brought up by Granny Goodness because the sons of Darkseid don't get love from Darkseid; they get thrown into a pit and into the planet's worst orphanage and only orphanage.
So it's also the best orphanage
No, it's not.
by default.
And basically, he had to crawl his way out of a fucking techno hell dungeon.
Yeah, Granny Goodness, like, despite her name, fucking scary.
And also has the voice of Ed Asner.
Yeah, which works weirdly.
But I'm not kidding. That's
a real thing.
That's a thing. But somebody made a modern. I don't know anything about these characters. That is a section of DC that I just don't interact with. I'm usually a Batman guy, so Batman interacts with his rogues gallery and occasionally somebody outside of his rogues gallery. But he only ever comes in contact with Darkseid through the Justice League, I guess. But I'm not as much into the Justice League as I am the individual characters. I like Batman by himself. I like Green Lantern by himself. That kind of stuff. But this is just a section that I don't really interact with. And he said, this is actually really, really good. And even though this isn't what you wanted, this Mr. Miracle series is excellent. And it had won an Eisner Award, which is like kind of the Academy Awards of comics. But there's more prestige to them than, the cheesy big ones that we know of, like the Emmys and the Grammys and stuff like that. Like Eisner Awards actually mean something. Like it's an actual mark of quality. It's not just an advertisement.
You know what this reminds me of? This is something I completely forgot to bring up on Reactive. But you just explained what the Eisner Awards are.
Yeah.
Do you know what the Hugo Awards are?
I forget.
Best. I mean, I know it's weird to lump them into one category, but we used to do it, so we still do it. But
science
it's like
fiction? Is it
best science fiction and or fantasy?
That's it. Okay.
And it's always been literature or video. I say video because there's been like YouTube stuff that has legitimately won a Hugo or been nominated for it. But speaking
that's
of
generally a mark of quality as well as the Hugo Awards.
Well, speaking of oh my god, groundbreaking! I didn't think that would happen. The Supergiant game Hades has become the first video game ever to win a Hugo.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Hugos are a big deal. It's kind of like winning a Pulitzer or something like that. It's not about the commercial success of something. It's about its legitimate.
That's the thing. Yeah, with the Oscars, a lot of it. I mean, like, if someone wins an Oscar, they did a good job. Like,
correct.
That's definitely true. They're not going to give it to like a terrible performance, director, whatever it is.
But it is a popularity vote.
But yeah,
come on.
Yeah, it's like an inside club decision.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Miracle was not like a top seller or anything like that until its notoriety came around. Like this miniseries, it ended up being one of the best things I've ever read in my life. So this is
nice.
This is going from not knowing much about the characters at all. Like it kind of just explains the background of the characters really quick at the beginning. So you don't really need to know these characters because they give you the background you need to understand them, which is good. So like a first-time reader can go into this with no prior knowledge whatsoever, and understand it because they will tell you, like the literally the beginning of the trade paperback, like through flashback tells you about the story I just told you, of the switching suns,
sure,
and him freeing himself, but basically scot-free gets to Earth and is like, well, what the hell do I do now? I'm just a guy who, escaped apocalypse. Like that's like that's all he is. He's a guy. He doesn't have any like super. His superpower is he's so good at escaping near-death situations. Like, and it's because he lived on Apocalypse. It's not because he has that ability. He learned it because he almost died that many times. So he it goes up. What he does is he comes to Earth and basically becomes a circus performer, so he could just do death-defying stunts and get out of booby traps. Right, that's what he can do. That's his forte. So it basically goes into his life. He's on Earth and he's barely surviving because he's a circus act, and he's also fighting a war with Apocalypse at the same time as living on Earth as a schlub. He's a prince, but he doesn't have any of the advantages to being royalty on Earth. He teleports off of Earth to go fight that war, and then he comes back and he's just a normal guy. So it deals with him and his wife's life of living that, and how weird it is, and how crazy it is, and also how much he hates his dad for giving him up, even though he's on the good planet, supposedly.
Well, I mean, his dad gave him up to Darkseid.
Yeah, exactly.
I know why, but Jesus Christ.
Exactly. So, and it deals with him raising a child himself and how he wants to avoid doing anything like that. And it's also very personal. It feels like the character feels real because he's having real moments with his baby.
Okay.
Which is interspersed with violent war back and forth. It's also very funny and very relatable all at the same time, when the situation shouldn't be relatable at all, but it is. It's just phenomenal, and the art is amazing too. I really, really recommend it. And finally, before we move on, I know we're running late. I watched a documentary on Chris Claremont and his influence on comics in general, because he's probably the most famous besides Stan Lee. I should have that caveat.
Well, also Steve Ditko, right?
Steve Ditko was Spider-Man. He did.
Chris Claremont was what, X-Men?
Yes, that's what I was about to say. The most famous, the starting duo for the X-Men was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And Jack Kirby was also the one who made the Mr. Miracle stuff. But anyway, Chris Claremont is the second most famous person to be author to shape the X-Men to be who they are. So Stan Lee invented them and set them up, right? But Chris Claremont really, laid the groundwork for everything that you love about the X-Men. He's the one that gave Wolverine his backstory. He's the one who gave him any characterization whatsoever. He's the one who gave him his adamantium claws. They were just claws at first. They weren't specific claws. He made the X-Men what they are. Dark Phoenix Saga. He also did he also wrote the highest selling comic book of all time, which is X-Men #1, back in the 90s, with that Jim Lee art that inspired the cartoon from the 90s. Yeah. So X-Men as you know it exists because Chris Claremont reinvented the X-Men back in the late 70s. And I watched this documentary. It was fascinating because he wrote X-Men from 1978 all the way until 1991. Every month. Every month. He wrote that comic. He's since come back and done other runs after that. But imagine writing a comic book for that long that wasn't your own. This wasn't a creator-owned comic. That just doesn't happen. I think he might have the longest running comic book history, like other than maybe Stan Lee's run on Spider-Man. I think Stan Lee's run on Spider-Man was really long. It was like 1969 to like 82. So like that's the only one that I know of that I can think of that might rival it. But that isn't creator owned, right? There's other stuff that's you have Usagi Yojimbo that's obviously lasted like.
Yeah, that's decades.
Yeah, exactly, decades.
And there's lots of manga, like One Piece has been going on since we were in middle school and it's still going.
Yeah, but that's obviously been started by that guy and continued on.
Yeah, that's creator owned. Yeah,
creator owned. This like Stan Lee like created it for Marvel, right? He didn't own those characters, so and then passed them on to other people, and I just loved this documentary so much that I started getting back into X-Men. So I started picking up these Epic collections, and now I'm addicted to them. So these Epic collections are, like, Marvel used to be really bad at reprinting their history. They only ever, like, really put out, like, trade paperbacks of, like, the really big events that have happened in Marvel history. Like the, Infinity Gauntlet would be something you'd be able to find. Yeah. You'd be able to find, like, a defining, like, really good crossover. But they've been kind of poor at keeping things in print and also printing just, like, runs of things. But with these Epic collections, they just started a couple years ago. You can start getting gigantic chunks of Chris Claremont's, like, X-Men, for instance, which is what I wanted to get into. And, like, all the comics associated with them that crossed over. Like if the X-Men met up with Spider-Man in a comic and he wrote it, like around that time, they'll stick that in there. It's really amazing. So I picked up those and I've just been addicted to them. I've been buying them. They just came out with I just talked about the Spider-Man Venom symbiote being rejected by Spider-Man. Sure. I read that story because of the Venom one that they came out with. The Venom Epic Collection, which has every early appearance of that character up until his first miniseries. That's like an amazing thing too. So I'm addicted to Spider-Man, like that era of Spider-Man, the late 80s era of Spider-Man, because I love that, and that's where Todd McFarlane got his start, was drawing for Incredible Hulk and Amazing Spider-Man around that time. So that before he moved on to Spawn and all that. So I'm just really enjoying it, and I'm kind of addicted to getting all of the X-Men comics from the 80s because Chris Claremont not only wrote the X-Men, but he also wrote, like, all the spin-off titles too, which is insane. He wrote, like, the New Mutants. He wrote Excalibur and Wolverine. Like, he didn't write them for nearly as long. Like he passed them on after that, but like he was writing, like, at some points he must have been writing like 3 or 4 titles every single month. Like, he must have been, like, going nuts. But, like, yeah, it's really amazing, and I have a lot of the Epic collections from that era, and I'm really enjoying it. So I just wanted to say that definitely seek them out, because the Epic collections each are kind of self-contained, because they aim to tell an entire story of like a specific era of that character. Like, you can read multiple Epic collections that feed into each other, but they're largely self-contained about what they're trying to tell you at that time, if you want to read them on their own. So definitely recommend them. But yeah, we gotta move on to fan stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Living Corpse had a bunch of comments, but I'm going to read 2.
Sure.
Thanks to Unreal 5, the chain link fences in the new Matrix game are actual chain link fences.
Wow.
I'm serious. Most games just use a solid fence with a chain link texture. That's
Wow.
pretty cool.
That is neat.
Yeah. And new Dune game. Need brutal Dune mod. Hey. And then one more comment. I don't know about the game, but I believe in the original Japanese book, Parasite Eve, the mitochondria Eve is given the name Eve because she's the first of her kind, so she's named after the biblical Eve.
There you go.
I actually double-checked. I have a copy of the book, obviously translated to English. I mean, the logic checks out, but it does specifically say that the doctor named her after his wife Kiyomi's birthday, which was on Christmas Eve. So it actually is specifically a Christmas name.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, okay. And then School Filmer says, "Why, yes, I have watched Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's a total cheese fest, especially with Long John Baldry's version of Dr. Ivo Robotnik being a highlight of the show, with the rolling... I need a drink of water to do that better. With the rolling R's. The multiple R's are intentional. It was typed. Being a huge ham and having a wide assortment of insults." Yeah, I love that. That was like one of the meme clips, the YouTube Poops promotion. He's great.
That show is YouTube poop fodder, like unlike any very few
and that's
things.
what the comment says too. Not to mention the extreme YouTube poopability of that show as well. And yes, I do remember also the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. That one is also a total cheeseball, but that may be my nostalgia talking.
That show isn't nearly as good as the Sonic one, and the Sonic one's not that good either. But
the Sonic one stands out for its insanity.
The Sonic one's at least watchable to a point. The Mario one is not watchable.
And then Ross says Jazz Jackrabbit had 2 or 3 Christmas levels. Was pretty
good.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And then C. Berry says Klaus, like Klaus, is a great recent Christmas movie. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I never saw that one. You know what I have seen? I forgot about this, but we forgot about Christmas horror films, Lotus.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those.
Yeah.
Actually, this is... I don't know if I'd call this horror, but I genuinely enjoy Santa's Slay, S-L-A-Y, with Bill Goldberg.
That's a comedy.
It is.
But I legitimately enjoyed Krampus. I saw it in the theater and I enjoyed it.
I heard that's just straight up a good movie.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's like it's stupid schlock as far as like
it knows what it is.
The human characters, but like it's a good movie though.
It knows what it is. It knows it's it plays it up, but not in a cringy way. It's a good way that it plays it up. Yeah.
All right, and then our question, I had said that Ross gave us a bunch of questions, so I'm going to do a 2-parter again. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally? And what turns you off?
Well, for what turns me on creatively, I really like stories that are relatable from a very human level.
Okay.
I really, especially about a character that tries really hard. That's something that always gets me. A character that tries really hard and wants to be noticed for it. That's the kind of thing that always gets me.
Well, in regard to that, I've mentioned this before in terms of things I like, but I really enjoy the character that goes from nothing to something, but you can see the process. It's not like one day he wakes up and you're the chosen one, but I mean like busts his ass and like you could see how far he's come.
Yeah, that especially really works well in a TV series where like the character really has time to become what they want to be. Or in a comic book, like Invincible's like that, right? The character basically starts off as barely being able to fly, and he's that way for a while, and he eventually gets to be Superman essentially, but it's not without his taking his lumps. Like he is low man on the totem pole even amongst the other superheroes that are around him. He's a low level Superman with everybody else being way more powerful than he is. So like imagine being a low level Superman. Like how like frustrating that would be. Especially considering that he knows what his potential can be, compared to his father, who is the real deal, right? So, I really like stuff like that too. Like things that turn the superhero into a relatable character. I mean, like I really like.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I really like Spider-Man because he's just so goddamn relatable. I mean, he's always down in the dumps. He's poor in most depictions of him. He has nothing. He
That was one of my favorite bits, by the way. Do you remember the end of the '90s series where he interacts with multiple realities of himself?
Oh yeah. He's just basically Stark Spider-Man, like that he meets. Like
Yeah, and he's like, "You're a billionaire in your universe," and he's like, "Yeah, aren't you?" And it's like, "Oh,
well, I mean that kind of goes back to like the Tom Holland one. He's basically the heir of Tony Stark in the Tom Holland universe.
Yeah.
So it kind of flipped it on its head, but they actually address that. So like it's a neat thing. Spider-Man is always supposed to be kind of struggling, and he also is a character that has superpowers, but he hardly ever solves his problems with them. Like they're kind of there to get you to read the comic, but
Yeah.
the best writers realize that Spider-Man's real strength is how smart he is, and how compassionate he is. Those are actually his greatest strengths. So, like a lot of what he brings to the table is his science. Like he brings science and math to his problems.
Well, I mean, even his webs,
Yeah.
except for some versions, like Tobey Maguire, it's a mutant power, but like his webs are not Spider-Man powers. Like he made those.
Yeah.
Like, he's supposed to be able to jump and climb walls, but web swinging was not a thing. He just invented that shit.
And another thing that I love about him is that like in like the encyclopedias, like the Marvel handbooks about like the universe, he's one of the hardest people in the entire Marvel universe to fight because
His fighting style is insane. Even people who could easily kill him like can't connect with him.
he has a completely unique fighting style that he invented himself. And
Yeah, like
and nobody
I remember
else can
I had one of those.
interact with.
I had one of those little encyclopedia books myself. It mentions he beat the Hulk in a fight because he just wore him down. Because
Yeah.
the Hulk just didn't know what to do with him.
Yeah, like he'll just hop all around and do all kinds of crazy crap, and he also does all the crazy stuff with his webs that like nobody else can do, and the webs are
was
extremely
something-
versatile.
Well, that was what I really loved about the. I never did see Amazing Spider-Man 2, but that's something I loved about Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield.
Yeah,
Is
the
like,
end of that
you
movie.
never really got to see Spider-Man properly fight with his powers in the Maguire movie. There was one little time with those thugs in a back alley where he leaps off one of their backs or something, and it looked pretty cool. But when Garfield was fighting like the lizard just knocks him on his ass and then goes for the ground pound. But Garfield Spider-Man shoots webs under Lizard's legs to the wall past him, like yanks himself through Lizard's legs toward the wall. Who sees that coming? Like he's on the ground and he like shoop just flies under you. Not even if he's gonna leap backward. Like it's unnatural, which is why it works because nobody sees that coming.
And not only that, but he straight up catches him like a fly in a web and like and bundles him up like a spider would.
Yep.
Which they've never really shown Spider-Man just like fucking acting like a spider, which he does in that movie. So like, I think Amazing Spider-Man #1 is a very underrated Spider-Man movie. That
It's
movie
very good.
that
It's
movie
very
is
good.
good. I'm gonna straight up say that movie is good.
It is.
And it's up there with the best of the Spider-Man movies, honestly. But yeah, it's up there with Spider-Man 2 and this new one. The new one is man. I'll say this again. I haven't seen a as impactful of a superhero movie since The Dark Knight. Like it is that good, and it's good in a different way. But yeah, that kind of stuff turns me on. I love seeing stuff like that. Turns me off. I hate hubris. That's one of the things that really turns me off anytime.
Are you talking? I mean, this could be far-reaching, so maybe the answer is just yes. But do you mean from a character's perspective or like a creator's perspective?
From a creator's perspective, because
Okay.
hubris can be used in a character perspective as a teaching moment or as a weakness.
It was the launch of the Odyssey.
Well, not only that, but like one of my favorite like characters in sitcoms has been Frasier, and his entire like all of his problems,
snooty prick.
all of his problems come from the fact that he has such high hubris. Like all of his problems come from that. So like, but I hate it when like that movie that video game Yike came out, like that game, like that the guy who's making
the Y2K, a postmodern RPG.
That guy who's making that just turns me off so badly that I don't even ever want to interface with that game.
That title was pretentious as shit. I don't even know anything about the game, but it's just like, oh god.
Well, the game is like that though. The game it does not earn what it's trying to throw at you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's trying to be the things that I've been talking about. You know, the things that are heartfelt, but it doesn't earn it. It doesn't, you know, build those things up and give those characters those challenges that it needs in order to say these things. It doesn't artistically give the context it needs in order to make these things impactful. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it wants to be those things, but without the work, and and that's inexcusable in my book.
Actually, you know what I'm gonna say then? I am going to take your answer, but a different angle of it. Okay? I'm going to go with a completely different kind of creator hubris. And we have seen this thing all the time. Most recently with Netflix's Cowboy Bebop. And I am not talking at all about the quality of the show. What I mean is just knowing that you're going to be able to make more without actually knowing. Cowboy Bebop, for example, on Netflix, ends on, like, in a way that's like, this will get resolved in season 2. But there isn't a season 2. You don't start writing season 2 when you haven't gotten metrics for season 1.
Yeah.
That kind of thing pisses me off. Or Pirates of the Caribbean. 2 and 3 were filmed at the same time, and then the cliffhanger of 2 is just dealt with off-screen.
That's
between
ridiculous.
2 and 3. What the fuck? Like stuff like that. Like planning for planning ahead is good, but just knowing everyone's gonna love this. I got 10 more seasons written down, and they'd better exist because the season I'm currently working on is gonna end in such a way that makes you like it's not an ending. That shit pisses me off because a lot of times that is where it ends, and you just have an incomplete show.
Yeah, and speaking of making references for the sake of it rather than like being true to those characters is also a big turnoff.
Okay.
Like, and anytime they add Pyramid Head, you know, that's like the classic example that we always talk about. Like, adding Pyramid Head into anything is stupid. Like,
well, actually, no. Here's an example, which is kind of like here's an example of that. Like a character's reputation is supposed to be earned, right? You have
Correct.
to get to that point. Either they know they're badass and they're just about to prove it to you, or you've seen where they come from and you know they're badass already. But how about this one?
Like John Wick. John Wick is the latter, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, John Wick, everyone knows he's badass except for you, the audience. You're like, well, he's the protagonist of a movie, but then, yeah, you see him when he gets mad, and you're like, oh my god. But, a bad example of this is I might be getting the titles wrong, but I want to say Star Trek Into Darkness, the movie with Khan.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's the one. So when he comes out, you've never seen him in the movie. The characters don't know who he is. You, the audience, I mean, maybe you've seen trailers, so you know where this is going. But, like, the audience doesn't know who he is, I guess. He comes out, but it's like a reveal. Like, I am Khan, and like that only means anything to you if you've seen the movie from the 1970s. But like, this is a different universe. Like, who is this guy? Why should I fear and respect him?
Yeah.
And especially if you're a younger person seeing the movie, even I have actually seen Star Trek II. But like, this isn't that. This is not Ricardo Montalban. Like, this is a new interpretation of Khan. Like, Kirk doesn't even know who he is. Like, in Star Trek II...
Yeah. You need to give the characters a reason to hate and fear him.
Yeah, like, he shouldn't be scary because you've heard your dad talk about him in another movie. Like, why do I care about this? Like, that's the problem.
Even in Star Trek II, I
was going to say, in Star Trek II, that was a sequel to an episode.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
knew who Khan was.
Exactly. The characters were already afraid of him.
Yeah, Khan was a big deal. They exiled him to a planet, and he's like, bitch, I've been doing nothing but working out since then. Like, that's scary. But in Star Trek Into Darkness, this is technically a brand new character called Khan, but he's supposed to be scary because the person watching the movie, recognizes the name Khan from like 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, J.J. Abrams is very guilty of this in general.
He did it with Star Trek 2009 and with Star Trek The Force Awakens.
And
with The Force
Star
Awakens,
Wars,
it was appreciated at the time, because it's like, this is what a Star Wars movie feels like. But when you look back at it, this is what someone who maybe saw Star Wars a couple times as a kid knows about Star Wars. It's very surface level. These are things I recognize and appreciate, but like, that's all it is.
Here's the thing. You need to create these emotional responses rather than reference them.
Yes.
And those movies do not do it. They want to, but they don't know how to. They don't know how to make you love it on the level that the original trilogy made you love it.
Yeah, and that's also my concern, by the way, with Ghostbusters 2016 and kind of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters Afterlife, it leans heavily into the nostalgia, but at least it's trying to be like a new thing. But Ghostbusters 2016, it's an origin story, but like, you're supposed to already like it because you know what Ghostbusters is. If you know nothing at all going in, then it's like, why is this supposed to be like, oh, like when we get there?
Now, I have to say this because I've been talking about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The new Spider-Man movie could easily be like any of these things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it actually earns it. And this is what all of those schlocky companies do with their like licensing and references to your old nostalgic shit wish they could do. Is what happened in this movie.
Well, that's the whole problem. It's like, let's capitalize on things that they recognize from their childhoods. That's what a lot of the MCU has been. I mean, they've been original twists, but largely stories that we remember from the 90s. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, Iron Man's origin story is older than that, but like a lot of it is like stories like the Thanos thing. Like, a lot of it is stories we probably like could have had the chance to pick off of comic book shelves when we were kids. So it's like, thing you recognize, you're gonna like that. Like, the new Venom movie is a take on Maximum Carnage.
Sure.
It's stuff like that. Now, like, you can make that stuff earned and exist and do a good job in a vacuum, but you have to be careful for exactly what you just said. Like, thing you know, therefore you'll like it. It's like, no, I like it because it's good. That's the difference.
Yeah. This new Spider-Man movie must have consulted with a lot of living, like, Spider-Man authors.
Sure.
And I think they were, because there was a lot of thank yous to big names in Spider-Man. So, like, they must have been like, no, in order to understand Spider-Man, you need to do this, and then they actually did it.
That is a thing that, like, there's stuff like that is overlooked. Like, it's very easy to use a very well-known quote, for example,
Sure.
like from the source material, but if you don't know why it was being said, like for example, let's say I got really, really, really angry at someone. Boy, do I hate someone. I've never been this mad in my life. And I say, like, from hell's heart, I stab at thee. For hate's sake, with my last breath, I spit at thee. Like, the guy was fucking dying when he said that. He said my last breath in the quote.
I have been stabbed. I have been stabbed.
I have been stabbed. But like, actually, I wasn't even really thinking about this, but Star Trek 2.
Oh yeah, lots of Shakespeare.
Use those quotes.
Lots of Shakespeare.
Khan said
in
it when
Star
he was
Trek.
fucking dying, and you know that like Khan said it when he was dying, and there's another shot in the movie of Kirk reading Moby Dick. Like they both know the book, and Khan is using the quote contextually appropriately. Kind of weird considering he's actually dying and it's a literary reference. He's just considering that at the time.
Well, what's also good about First Contact is that they bring that back, but in a different context.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, different context, yeah.
Huh, what do you know?
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
But like, yeah, the point is, if you're going to reference something, then like, know why it caught on. We had this conversation before about how revered the Millennium Falcon and the DeLorean are, but it's because we saw them 30 years ago. They're both pieces of shit in their own universes.
I mean, to be fair, the Millennium Falcon probably is known amongst the rebels because it blew up both of the Death Stars. I mean, come on.
Luke blew up the Death Star.
The first one, not the second one.
The first one.
The second one blew up.
Okay.
The Millennium Falcon blew it up.
would be more well known, and it's piloted by a hero. I'll give them that. But like, it is a piece of shit. Like
it is.
I think I used this example before. It's your 1970s like piece of shit car with a Formula One engine in it. Like he modded a junker, which is why it surprises the Imperials.
Fits.
That thing doesn't have a hyperdrive. What the hell?
And it barely fits in it. Like it barely interfaces
and like in Empire
with
Strikes
it
Back, they have to like physically like wrap the wall with their fists to turn the computer back on.
Yeah, no,
it's a piece of junk.
It's held together with duct tape. I mean,
so like so the Millennium Falcon would actually be known in the Star Wars universe, but like it's like, oh, the Millennium Falcon's the coolest ship. Like well, the ship itself, no, it really isn't.
We
and like the
we
DeLorean,
just like it because of its design and what we know.
Yeah, it's a clever
done.
spaceship design, and like the DeLorean, like that's a piece of shit car, but it's cool because it has a time machine built in it. But it's a DeLorean. Even in the movie, they're like, really, that's what you're going with?
Yeah, no. Yeah. In fact, there are several jokes about how it doesn't start up like it should.
There's a lot of stuff like that today where like we have this reverence for stuff that's like, but we're missing the point. Like we revere it because we loved watching it when we were kids, but like in context, it's not good. Like as a joke.
Yeah, no. In fact, like Marty's like, really, a DeLorean? Like these things are like
when he first introduces
it,
a DeLorean.
Yeah, like old and shitty, and he's just and it's Doc Brown that's out of touch. Like he's just like, oh, this is a mark of style. Like
it's fine. And they carried that through too when he went back to 50s Doc Brown, like. Oh yeah, like I got this brand new Japanese watch or whatever the hell he said. Japanese technology's terrible. What? Or like Ronald Reagan's the president. What, the actor? To be fair, he couldn't have known back then. It was before that time. But like Doc Brown's just constantly not with it, even though he's a genius.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of stuff turns me off. I also don't like dogpiled opinions either.
Okay. You're not a big fan of endless results of the same YouTube search result, which is people with their hands over their faces talking about how utterly shitty the new Blockbuster is?
Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, because like everybody, all these people that are reading this start to get this opinion about this thing that they don't even know about. Like they've never seen it or anything like that, but they seem to think that they have an informed opinion because they've read whatever Try Hard Angry Man has talked about it. And
well the best is when Try Hard Angry Man that they're reading or watching has himself not actually experienced the thing either,
exactly.
But he has a platform.
Yeah, and
I just know it's going to be bad,
especially when that person's also a dope. On top of it all, which does happen too. So like they just don't know anything about anything. Those are a short list of the things that turn me off. But
yeah. Oh yeah, I'll take it.
Anything else, Lotus, in terms of that?
Nah, I'm probably burnt out at this point.
Yeah, it's getting pretty late as well. So that's the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. This was great. This week was really good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep you. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays for our sister podcast, Reactive Consciousness, where we will have our first episode in year 2022. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on pretty much anything. Just give me a heads up.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
All right, well, we will catch everybody on Tuesday then.
Until next year, everyone.
Bye-bye.